Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing writer Eric Palicki, the writer of the new series Blacksmith, and the preview code, it's May, M-A-Y, 211122. That's the previews catalog code for the Blacksmith comic book series, and it's coming out from Ahoy Comics that comes out on July 7th. Is that correct, Eric?
That is correct.
Okay.
And
all
hello.
Right. Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't give you a chance to say hello. Sorry, Eric.
No worries.
Okay. All right. So, Eric, I'm going to give you a little bit background history to our listeners. So, Eric has been working in comics. So, Eric, you've been working in comics for about 10 years now? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would call it 10 years. I mean, 10 years professionally.
Okay. All right. So about 10 years as an editor and writer, you have worked for Marvel, Black Mask Studios, Darby Pop Publishing, Dark Horse, and Scout Comics, and of course, Ahoy Comics. He has written Atlantis wasn't built for tourists for Scout Comics, No Angel from Black Mass Studios, All We Ever Wanted, Stories of a Better World, and it's from A Wave Blue World Inc. And also to your writing Deadbeats, also from a Wave Blue World. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've done a total of 5 anthologies for A Wave Blue World. Both All We Ever Wanted and Deadbeats, which you mentioned, were nominated for Ringo Awards the previous 2 years.
That's pretty cool. And then lastly, now correct me if I'm wrong, and you wrote, and was it just only a one issue of Guardians of Infinity #6 for Marvel? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a one-issue story starring Gamora and Kitty Pryde.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, did I miss anything?
No, that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. All right. And before we start the interview, I'm going to give a big shout out to Hannah of Superfan Promotions. Hannah, mahalo, or thank you in Hawaiian, for setting up this interview and for providing me with an advanced copy of Blacksmith #1. So thank you very much. Eric, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, I just, appreciate what both Hannah and David Hyde of Superfan Promotions have done to facilitate podcasts like this. I really enjoy talking to fellow comics lovers about my work and about comics in general, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Jason.
Oh, Eric, thank you very much. Okay, so Eric, first off, where can listeners follow you on social media?
Sure. Well, I have a website at ericpalicki.com. It does include a web store with some of my previous work available. In addition to that, I'm very active on Twitter at Eric Palicki, and less active than everyone tells me I should be on Instagram, also at Eric Palicki.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Midwest. I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. Mm-hmm. Lived in Toledo until I was in my mid-30s, moved to Columbus, Ohio. And then from there, took a big jump, and my girlfriend and I moved out to Seattle, Washington, which is where we are right now.
Oh, I've been to Seattle. It's pretty cool. Later in the interview, we'll talk a little bit more about Seattle and stuff. So
sure.
All right. So, what were your first comics that you read?
So I came to comics at about 6th grade. My good friends at the time were comics fans, and one of them had recently his uncle had outgrown his own comic collection and given it to my friend, and just spending a day at my friend's house, we started going through this box of old comics and discovered just a wealth of really cool books from the 80s. Chris Claremont's heyday with the Uncanny X-Men, the Wolverine miniseries. I know we've talked about the Armor Wars storyline in Iron Man, which was really what hooked me. And then from there I started buying things off the shelf. At that time when I started reading, it was Jim Lee was just wrapping up his run on Uncanny before moving on to X-Men, and then of course over to Image Comics. Mark Silvestri and Larry Hama on Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the books that I really loved when I first started reading comics.
Okay. So you mentioned the Armor Wars. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you like the Silver Centurion armor for Iron Man?
That was my first armor, right? That was the armor that Tony had when I first started reading Iron Man. So it will always be one of many armors that I really, really love. I do love the modern Adi Granov designed armor that they used for the movies, but yes, the Silver Centurion armor is incredible.
No, it is. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, it really is. All right. So Drew from Comics for Fun and Profit podcast submitted this question. What was your first LCS?
Oh, so in Toledo, I bounced around to a few local comic stores. My very, very first LCS was a comic store called King's Comics in Toledo, Ohio. And then eventually they shut their doors. And I moved over to a comic store called Cosmic Creations, also in Toledo. And then at about that time, I kind of stopped reading comics for that period of time in high school when a boy's interest turns to other things. And then when I came back to comics as an adult, my LCS was the Game Room, once again in Toledo, Ohio, and that is still. That's the store that I always consider, my home store, my LCS, even though I'm out here in Seattle, Washington. The Game Room will always and forever be my LCS.
That's pretty cool. I have off the cuff question. What comic drew you back to reading comics again or getting interested in comics?
Well, I was in school. I was an English writing major. I knew I wanted to write creatively in some capacity. And I thought for a lot of my college career that I was going to be a short story writer, that I was going to be a Ray Bradbury or a Harlan Ellison. And when that kind of fell through and I realized that that's not where my skills lied, I picked up a copy just casually. I was browsing a Barnes & Noble graphic novel display, and I picked up a copy of The Authority.
Oh, yes.
By Warren Ellis. And what's really interesting about The Authority is that first trade paperback they put out, they reprinted the first issue script in the back of the trade.
Oh, okay.
And as I was looking at the script, I was thinking to myself, well, hey, I still want to be a writer. I still want to be in a creative profession. I can do this. And I mean, to this day, my script format looks like Warren Ellis's script format. So that's still how I write my scripts.
That is pretty cool. Okay, so the next question, it's a nice segue to the next question. So how did your journey begin breaking into comics?
So yeah, just like I said, I found that that script and then subsequently tried writing my own very badly. Those are things that no one will ever see, lost to the annals of history. And then just like Jake from Adventure Time says, sucking at something is the first step towards becoming pretty good at something. And I just kept at it. And eventually I was confident enough in the scripts I was writing to write just a 4-page short story. And then I found an artist who lived in Brazil, and he was willing to draw that 4-page story for $25 a page, which is an incredible bargain.
Yeah.
And it's just a little 4-page story. Again, I don't know that anyone will ever see these again. It was called The Undertaker's Daughter, and it was about a teenage girl who was also a hit woman. And I put it online, and 7 people read it, but those 7 people reacted positively, so I did it again. did it again. Eventually became confident enough to do some longer stories.
Yes.
I did a book called Orphans, which was a 5-issue, 110-page graphic novel miniseries. I did that on Kickstarter. And, that was successfully funded. And so I did that again.
Yes.
With a book called Red Angel Dragnet, which is another Kickstarter funded graphic novel. Which, having those two successful books out there, while not having a publisher attached, people who read them seemed to by and large enjoy the work. And that attracted a couple of smaller publishers who were interested in collaboration. I did Fake Empire with Darby Pop, which is a graphic novel about someone kills the Tooth Fairy on page 1, and it becomes a murder mystery of who did it. And from there, I got a little attention from Marvel and was able to just at least do 1-page story, and that makes me a Marvel writer, and you can never take that away from me.
Yeah.
But then, I did No Angel, which, got some attention from publishers. And because I had wanted to work with Wendell Cavalcante, who is the artist on Blacksmith, we did a book together called Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists. And because I had earlier success on Kickstarter, we took that book to Kickstarter. It was successfully funded, and that drew the attention of Scout Comics. And it was, reprinted and published as a 4-issue miniseries with Scout, again, to, positive reviews. And here we are. It's just, it's like climbing a ladder, I suppose, right? It's, you do something small and you just keep climbing.
Yeah. How did it feel to see your name on a comic book, your published work? How did it feel?
It still feels, present tense, incredible.
Okay.
I just try to take Wednesdays off on days when I have a book release, if I can manage it, just because there is something very special about being able to go to an LCS on release day and seeing your book on the shelf. And that is, I think, hopefully something I never lose. I hope that I'm always just delighted to see my name on a book on a Wednesday.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Okay, so now we're going to move into Blacksmith. Now, without giving any spoilers away, what is the premise of the story?
With zero spoilers, Blacksmith is a supernaturally tinged noir detective story about a woman named Janie Jones Strummer Mercado, who is hired to find 30 stolen bullets, which may or may not have been cast from the silver that was given to Judas.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And then how did you come up with the story?
It is a byproduct of my love of those classic noir detective stories. I set this in LA, just like all of those Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe stories that that you imagine Humphrey Bogart walking around in LA or Chinatown. And also a love of that supernaturally tinged dark fantasy of things like Supernatural or Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That really is. And then and I know again you're paired up with Wendell, your artist again from, now correct me if I'm wrong, from Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists. how did you guys pair up again for this? Did you request for him or?
Yes. So remember when I told you that I was finally confident enough to hire an artist from Brazil to do that little 4-page story?
Yes.
That was Wendell. So Wendell and I have a 10-year plus relationship in comics, and um, he is a delightful artist to work with. He is someone I consider a friend in
Yes.
spite of the geographic distance between us.
Yes.
And, I hope that he and I end up having one of those Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips type,
Mm-hmm.
creative partnerships that lasts for decades. He's always someone who's great to work with. He did Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists with me, as you said. He's drawing this now. We have, other pitches out in the ether. Who knows what
Mm-hmm.
will happen in the future?
Yes.
But yeah, he is wonderful to work with, and I was very excited that when I pitched this book to Ahoy and
Mm-hmm.
showed them Wendell's art, they were also on board with him drawing the book.
That is so cool. As I mentioned before, that I've read the advanced copy. You know, I love Wendell's art, and I don't know, to me, it kind of sort of reminds me a little bit of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez's art. I don't know, I just love it. I'm not an artist, and I don't know the technical term, but it's really nice. It's to me, it looks clean.
He's got a very clean,
Yeah.
he reminds me of like part of that tradition. And I, of course, I hope your listeners will forgive me. In spite of being in comics, I sometimes am at a loss for picking up the nuances of styles, but he belongs in that same tradition of all those great, late 80s artists like Jerry Ordway and
Yes.
Jose yeah,
Jose Luis.
Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Sorry, excuse me.
No.
And that style. There's even hints of Alan Davis in there. So yeah, I definitely see that, and it's it was perfect for this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that whether it's with me or on his own, I hope that this book gets him the attention that he has deserved all along.
Yeah. And then let's see. Also, too, now correct me if I'm wrong. So, Blacksmith issue #1. There's going to be how many variant covers is going to be on this one?
So the main covers for the whole series are by Liana Kangas, who is another dear friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
She drew a story that I wrote for the first Deadbeats anthology. And I was really excited when, again, Ahoy was on board with Liana doing the covers, and she's doing these really great. It's a mashup of these like pulpy 1950s novel covers, but with her like neon color sensibilities,
Yes.
and they're just fantastic. Now, the variants, the first issue variant cover will be by Jamal Eigel. And it's an astounding cover. And that's Jamal doing a cover on a book that I wrote is, it's something I can knock off my bucket list. I'm really excited there. And then Steve Pugh, they recently revealed that he's doing the variant cover for issue 2. And
that's pretty cool. That's really nice. Okay. So on the House Indie podcast, now that episode was on October 12th, 2020. You talk about creating a playlist on Spotify for each of your projects. Can you explain to our listeners? Can you just explain that a little bit to our listeners? Like your playlist and so forth, like that.
Sure. Like, it is a combination of two things when you do a playlist. The first one is that you kind of you try to find songs that set the mood for the kind of story you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
And you also, if you have a playlist that you go back to each time, whether the songs necessarily have anything specific to do with the story or not,
Mm-hmm.
You it puts you in the same mindset each time you listen to that same playlist. So if I'm writing and I have to leave and come back to a story, that playlist helps me get back into the mindset that I was in when I stepped away.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, you know, what is your playlist on Spotify for this series?
So as I said, the main character, Janie Jones Mercado, is her father. Her father, she inherited two things from her father. One is a love of the band The Clash, up to and including her nickname,
Yes.
Strummer. And the second thing I don't want to reveal just yet.
Okay.
It's out there in the world, but just for purposes of our podcast, I hope as many readers as possible come into it blind.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of Clash and a lot of covers of Clash songs on the Blacksmith playlist. And then as well as a few songs by artists that I know were influenced by the Clash, and songs that kind of set the mood. Watching the Detectives by Elvis Costello is on the Blacksmith playlist. And Werewolves of London is on the playlist. So yeah, it's a very punk inspired playlist this time around.
That's pretty cool. Okay, and then do you have what are now? Correct me if I'm wrong. Strummers, is it her best friend Ben Salat?
Ben Salat is her partner, her partner as a detective, right? As a PI, and friend, right? They are very close friends.
Yes.
Yes, but you know, this is as much Ben's story, and Ben gets a good story arc as well as Strummer herself in this book.
And then I'm gonna ask, do you have like any songs when you're writing for Ben or anything like that?
There is a song called Pretty Melody that is Ben's song by Butch Walker and the Black Widows. And then while there is an overall playlist for Blacksmith, I would say Strummer's song, which is not actually a Clash song, is a song called Black Sheep by an Australian musician named Gin Wigmore. And everyone should subscribe to the Ahoy newsletter, because I believe we are going to put the whole playlist in an upcoming installment of the newsletter.
Oh, that's going to be pretty cool. I was going to ask you about if you're going to put a playlist in one of the issues, but that's pretty cool in the Ahoy newsletter. Okay, that's pretty cool. That is.
Yeah. And then once the newsletter's out, I'll throw the Spotify link up on Twitter too for everyone to find.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so I am just asking because now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're a Star Trek fan, correct?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm just curious because I'm kind of when I was reading the copy, you know, I see Ben Salat's name. I see his last name. I thought is it any reference to the Salat of Spock's pet from yesteryears, or is it something totally different? Am I reading too much into Ben's last name?
So his name does have a meaning.
Okay.
You're a little lukewarm here. His name comes from an order of genies in Middle Eastern mythology.
Oh, okay.
Which is going to play into his origin, but again, I don't want to give away too much of the storyline.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
Now whether the Star Trek writers, you know, borrowed from that same mythology when they were naming parts of Spock's story is I couldn't speculate.
No, yeah, okay, no, okay. And then, how did you come up with the title Blacksmith?
So this was originally in the during the creations phase of this book. We were working with the working title Strummer,
Oh, okay.
But I wanted something a little pithier and something that goes along with the like Ahoy's sensibilities as somewhat, with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And the Strummer's client, the man who hires her
hmm
uh, to find the stolen bullets, is a man named Rainsford Black.
Yes.
And so from there, we were able to establish sort of the pun title Blacksmith.
Okay. Okay. Because when I was reading it, I kept going. It sounds like blacksmith. So like a blacksmith, that does
Sure.
the horseshoes and stuff like that. Okay. I'm gonna say now it makes a little more sense to me now. Okay. No, that's great. I love it. Um, let's see. Any last words about blacksmith?
It's a 5-issue miniseries.
Okay.
It is printed in, black and white with gray tones.
Yeah.
It's which is new for me, and I'm excited to show that off to people.
hmm
I'm very proud of the book. I hope that people will check it out in July.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, final questions before we start getting into the fun questions. Now,
Sure.
Drew submitted this. Where do you see the comic book industry going in 2021?
Well, that's a good question.
Oh,
Um, I feel like in some ways there has been a leveling of a playing field in 2020 because
mhm.
of a lot of companies having to go pencils down and
Yeah.
scale back their output. It has allowed a lot of indie publishers and a lot of Kickstarter first creators to thrive.
Yes.
People had money set aside for conventions and going to their LCS, and because of COVID restrictions, they haven't been able to do that. And what I really would like to see is for that playing field to remain level, because there are a lot of indie creators doing really interesting things outside of not just the big two, but outside of the traditional go to your LCS and place an order through Diamond
Yes.
uh, uh, business model.
hmm
And I hope that continues, and I hope that people are starting to realize just how expansive the medium can be, and how many cool things you can do if you're not strictly shackled to the 22 or 20 to 24 page monthly periodical model.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, and I'm going to say that's the perfect segue into the next question. If you can talk about what new projects do you have coming up?
Sure. So in June, I will be launching a Kickstarter for a oversized hardcover graphic novella.
hmm
And when I say oversized, I mean dimension-wise. We're going to print it in European-style dimensions, which are about 8.5 by 11.5 inches.
hmm
And it'll be a hardcover graphic novella. It's going to be called Manticore.
hmm
And it's going to be a standalone graphic novella, but I hope that it really opens up more stories set in the universe that I've created for that book.
hmm
I'm working with Chris Peterson, who was another comic book veteran. He did books, some work for Black Mask, as well as the Grindhouse Doors Open at Midnight series for
hmm
Dark Horse.
hmm
And he's turning in the best work of his career for this.
hmm
And we're working to have that book all done when we launch the Kickstarter.
Okay.
And again, it's an example of, I hope that it exists as a proof of concept of what you can do when you break free of the 20 to 24 page periodical model with
Yes.
an eye towards putting out a trade paperback.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And then I'm going to ask, I'm just touching bases. Deadbeats 2? Is that enough?
Yes, and then also in June we will be launching the Kickstarter campaign for Deadbeats 2. It will be edited by myself along with my editing partner Joe Corallo.
hmm
I am A Wave Blue World will be publishing that volume as well, and they have hired snipers to follow me around to make sure I don't reveal the the creative team too far in advance. But we've got another a really good mix of industry veterans and newcomers. It is going to be just like the first volume. It will
Uh-huh.
be a musically inspired horror stories.
Uh-huh.
And just like the first volume, again, it will focus on the mysterious Deadbeats record store and its equally mysterious shopkeeper, who acts as kind of like the crypt keeper from the old Tales from the Crypt stories, introducing the stories and with the stories kind of focusing on items for sale within the shop.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool. That really sounds pretty cool. Okay. All right. So, I'm slowly wrapping this up. So I'm going to start going into my fun question. So,
All right.
I know you are a Star Trek fan. Um, are you are you a fan of a certain series, like the original series, the Next Generation, or Deep Space?
I believe that the Next Generation is great.
Yes.
But my favorite series is Deep Space Nine. I think Deep Space Nine is the story, like um, all of the series found opportunities to tell mature stories, but I think the overall arc of Deep Space Nine is the most interesting to me.
Yes.
And it's it kind of defies the general mold of the Star Trek story.
Hmm. No, I mean, I'm going to say I agree with you. The original series still, I still love the original series. Deep Space Nine, I'm going to say whatever day. You ask me, what's your favorite Star Trek series? I could say Deep Space Nine. Tomorrow could be the original series. But it's usually the first two seasons. The third season was kind of okay. Um, I mean, I love the Next Generation. I do. But something about Deep Space Nine for me was like from, I think it was season 3, season finale, the Jem Hadar, all the way literally towards the end of Deep Space Nine run. That was to me the best story arc, you know. Yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah, yeah. Um, have you been to any Star Trek conventions?
No, I have never been to a Star Trek specific convention. Um,
Okay.
you know,
Mhm.
it's comic conventions I'm really excited to get back to.
Yes.
But with the demands of having a day job and everything else, it is sometimes you sort of have to pick and choose your battles. And comic conventions serve to several purposes for me. One is it's an opportunity to connect with readers
Hmm.
and colleagues, but it's also an opportunity for me to connect with editors and talk about future opportunities for work.
Yes. Oh, okay. Um, I'm going to get back to the conventions in a minute. A question about the conventions in a minute. Um, have you ever thought of writing a Star Trek miniseries, Star Trek Deep Space Nine miniseries for IDW, or is there a story brewing in your head going, what if there is this little story in part of the Dominion War that was never ever told? Has that ever?
I mean, yes, of course, I would love to work on a Star Trek book, but aside from talking to editors and expressing my interest,
Yes.
that the ultimate opportunity to do that is out of my hands, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
can pursue that work, but someone has to offer me the job first.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe someday. And the hope springs eternal. I would love to do work in that universe or
Mhm.
in its I know we talked about not talking about the Orville, but I would absolutely write an Orville story as well.
All right. Okay. Um, then okay, my convention question. Um, so what was your best convention moment or moments?
Let me see. So years ago,
Uh-huh.
I remember sitting in a bar in Chicago.
Mhm.
This was before C2E2 was even a convention, back in the Wizard World Chicago days, or the heyday of the Wizard World Chicago, I should say. It's still going on, but it was a very different show
Mhm.
once upon a time. And I just remember sitting in a bar with Adam Kubert and Mark Miller around the time they announced the Ultimate Fantastic Four series, and just drinking till 2 a.m. in the bar. And, it was kind of that moment where you realize that comics creators who you sometimes put on a pedestal and uh, are just regular people,
Mhm.
right? It's just, so, when you, and that helps a would-be creator, which I was at the time,
Mhm.
realize that, you know that level of success is attainable.
Mhm.
You know, and so, like, those are good moments, like the moments where you sit and everybody is on equal footing,
Mhm.
is great. And a similar, years later at C2E2 at the bar after hours,
Mhm.
Brian Azzarello just going on a tirade. I'm a Detroit Tigers baseball fan, and
Yeah.
he grew up in Cleveland before moving to Chicago, so he's an Indians fan, and just yelling at me because I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, using words that I dare not repeat on a podcast.
Yeah.
Um, was just that was a phenomenal experience.
It's just two guys talking baseball. That right? That's
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just
No,
I can but those are that's pretty cool. Like you said, it's just you you guys are just sitting at a bar, just talking about sports. But that's pretty cool. Okay, um, let's see. Um, I know you said I know earlier in the interview you mentioned about as much as you can, you try to take a Wednesday off when when your comic is going to be released on that Wednesday. Which LCS do you are you okay naming which LCS you go to?
yeah, in Seattle,
Mhm.
there are two stores in Seattle that I want to give a special shout out to, because they're wonderful stores.
Mhm.
They're incredibly supportive of the medium in general and of my work specifically. One is Outsider Comics and Geek Boutique, which is in the
Okay.
Fremont neighborhood of Seattle.
Hmm.
And then the other one is Arcane Comics and Games, which is in Shoreline, Washington, which is a northern suburb of the city.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Thank you. Um, let's see. Let's see. And have you been to Hawaii?
I have never been to Hawaii, but I
Hmm.
am now, relative to when I was back in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
Alaska Airlines has obviously direct flights to Hawaii. So maybe someday soon.
Yes. Okay. All right. Um, what is your favorite takeout place in Seattle?
Oh, favorite takeout place. Uh, well, since we've had a lot of takeout in the last year,
Hmm.
I will say uh, Next Level Burger, which is a vegetarian burger joint that is attached to Whole Foods Market.
Okay.
Does phenomenal veggie burgers,
Hmm.
and has absolutely been, uh, that's been our go-to for uh, the last several months while we're stuck in quarantine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. I'm based on I'm going to be wrapping this up already. Um, again, um, again, can you promote your social media platform again?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, once again, I hope people will check me out at Eric Palicki on Twitter,
Hmm.
at Eric Palicki on Instagram, and come find my website at ericpalicki.com.
Okay. And then any last words to our listeners?
Just a reminder that uh, Blacksmith will be in stores on July 7th. Please let your local comic store know if you'd like to pre-order a copy. Indie comics live and die by pre-orders. So it's always appreciated, both on my behalf, the publisher's behalf, and it helps your local comic store know what kind of books you're into and to make sure that you have a copy available when it's released in stores. It's not the ideal model for ordering comics, but it's what we've got. So please do that. And then, corollary to that is, over the past year, small businesses have taken a hit. So if you are buying comics, please consider a local comic store before you before you hit up a chain bookstore or Amazon.com. So,
Eric, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you regarding Ahoy's new miniseries, Blacksmith. So thank you very much. And then a reminder to our listeners. So again, Blacksmith, the preview order code now, or Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, it's May 211122. And again, it comes out on July 7th. If you get a chance, please put this on your pull list. I want to, I just want to give a big mahalo to Hannah. Again, Hannah, thank you very much for helping set up this interview. Thank you very much. Eric, do you want to add anything to that part?
No, just again, thanks to both Hannah and David Hyde at Superfan Promotions. They've been phenomenal. I love doing podcasts, and also thank you to you, Jason, for reaching out and getting me on the show. This has been, an awesome opportunity. I'm glad we were able to talk, and I hope we can do it again.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, and I hope we get to do it again, Eric. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. And Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. So thank you very much. And for, if you are a new listener to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast, please check out new episodes that come out every Saturday. And finally, I want to thank you, the listeners, for your time. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.